when we were trying to battle against Senate Bill 323 that would have criminalized abortion. So many people were shocked, like they just didn't think it would happen until they see these bills start to move. And then sometimes it gets to a point where it's too late, running into people at a rally or something and having them say, I'm here because I saw your video. I had no idea this was going on. If it moves somebody to engage, to just be aware of what's happening in front of them, that's the best outcome.
Hey, it's Grace, and this is Frogmore Stew. Today, I am with a group of influencers in South Carolina. This group of ladies has been online for quite some time, talking about things that are important to them. They are often the go-to for political news for many of us throughout the state. And I felt like it was really important to understand why they're doing it, what they're doing, and what they hope the outcome will be. So let me introduce everyone to Lori, Carey, and Jessicka. Hi, guys.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with who you are, what your handles are, where we can find you. So Lori, do you want to start?
Sure. I am Call to Act Southern Style on TikTok, Blue Sky, and I have other accounts, but often forget to post there. But generally, I am on TikTok and Substack the most.
Okay. Got it. And what is your content mostly about?
I work on reaching out to my representatives and provide information on it. And then also, here is a template that you can use to reach out to them as well. And just general, this is going on. This is why we need to be worried about it. And I tend to focus on language and propaganda and why things are happening the way that they are and what they're trying to achieve.
Okay. And Carey, how about you?
Hey, yeah. So I'm messy as a mother on all the platforms. I'm most active on TikTok, Instagram, and Substack. And the content that I create started out as primarily just repro content and what was happening with abortion access in South Carolina. And then once the session started, I started talking more about what was actually happening during subcommittee meetings, and then just organically started doing a daily update on what was happening, and it's just kept rolling. So a lot of what I do, though, is focus on reproductive rights, some immigration and LGBTQ, some of the bills and stuff that we see going through there. So a lot of just information about what's actually happening in our legislature, and also how to get involved, who to contact, and when we show up.
Yeah. And okay, Jessicka, how about you?
My handle is SE Jessicka Childs. I started on this when I was campaigning a couple of years ago and wanted everyone to know what the politicians were doing in the state of South Carolina, because we get so fixated on what's going on in our federal government that we don't know who our state representatives are, who our state senators are, and how the legislation that they are pushing is so much more effective to our daily lives than what's going on the federal level. Yeah. I'm also an advocate for LGBTQIA plus peoples. My son is trans, so that's been the thing that everybody knows me for. That in the battle of the books, we are still battling censorship with books, and so that's how I got started.
Got it. And so what was there? So Jessicka, you sort of just answered this question, but Carey and Lori, was there something in your life that made you want to start publicly talking about politics?
So I started creating content back in 2017 when I first became a mom. And so I've gone through mom stuff and different influencer stuff. But when I started working with Palmetto State Abortion Fund, I was doing a lot of their social media stuff. And as video content was becoming more and more popular, it was just like, okay, I have to do this begrudgingly initially. And so creating content for them was where I started with just, again, talking mostly about reproductive rights in South Carolina and abortion access. And the more comfortable I got doing it, the more I started doing it more on my own platform. And then, like Jessicka was saying, seeing how people had no idea what was going around in South Carolina. I mean, I remember so many people thinking abortion was banned in South Carolina, and we have a 6-week, which isn't much. I think a lot of people would still consider that a ban. But so just seeing the need for education for people to know what was going on in the state specifically.
Yeah. And Lori, how about you?
I started because I've always written to my reps and called them and been very involved. And in doing those letters and phone calls, I put a lot of research into it. I don't just call on, oh, I saw this online. I go through a whole process. And I thought, that is a lot of work that I'm doing. I don't know that everyone has time to put that type of effort into things that are going on. And I just thought, if I'm doing this, I might as well share it with other people to help and save them some time, but still be able to know what's going on. And I just felt like I needed to do more than just call and reach out. I wanted to be more involved. And the best thing that's happened from it is building a community. Knowing people, like meeting Jessicka and Carey, and the social support of other people that think that way. Because in South Carolina, it is very, very easy to feel like you are the only one that thinks progressively or is a Democrat. And most people will say, I'm an independent, because they don't want to upset all of the relationships in their family. But being out there and putting myself in a position where I have let people know this has been the most eye-opening thing, to know that I am not alone here in South Carolina. There are lots of us.
And so I that's an interesting point, because I feel like people with a progressive mindset living in this state often feel very isolated. And some of that is because, like in our 2024 state house elections, out of 124 races, 60 didn't have someone running in them in opposition. And so that means that there's no one on a day-to-day basis in their district talking about progressive policies. There's not someone doing the groundwork to lay out these are policies that go against what this other person is saying, and here's someone to be able to vote for. And I feel like by giving, you all three live in different parts of the state, right? We have upstate, Midlands, and Low Country. And I feel like what you all have brought is statewide unity in a way that puts out, like, there are people everywhere who feel like you do, who are looking at what's going on in our state and going, WTF, right?
Absolutely.
I think too, we see the upstate as like the crux of being the epitome of conservative, and some of the most terrible legislation is coming out of the upstate of South Carolina from our legislators that are up here. And then we progressively get a little less worse as we go towards the coast, but still not enough that it counts. So I think you're bringing us all together and being like, hey, you know what? These are the people that did run unopposed, and these are the people that are creating problems in the state house. I cannot tell you how many people do not know some of the things that these gentlemen, mainly the gentlemen, are saying in the state house.
April Cromer. April Cromer.
Yeah, April Cromer. Yes,
You know,
April
I have
Cromer.
opinions.
My husband did run against April Cromer, and so we don't have the best relationship.
And you brought up a good point earlier too. Is like, we all do live and have friends who are identified conservatives, and so there is a sort of a fine line when you're in a state where identity around your political attachment is a very important thing. And the Republicans have worked for a very long time on associating what your identity looks like. In fact, one of the top things that people say when I talk to them in focus groups is, why do you identify as a Republican? What foundational beliefs do you have? And they almost always say, I'm a Christian. And
Mhm.
the thing that's so fascinating to me that we know about the Democrat Party in South Carolina is 60% of the Democrat Party is made up of the Black community. And the Black community is more Christian than most any other community out there. And so it's so fascinating to me that there's this disconnect that Democrats somehow aren't Christians also. And that, I think, can tell you a lot more about Christianity and its attachment to politics than what religion really is supposed to be,
I
right?
have so thoroughly enjoyed the Black Caucus this legislative session
Yeah.
and their Jesus amendments, and they really have been playing the long game. Like they are, hey, we are Christians, these are Jesus amendments, and you're opposed to those. I
Yeah.
thought this was about Jesus, so I really have enjoyed the Black Caucus this legislative session.
Yeah. And I will say to all three of you, one of the things that I love about your content is you do post a lot from what's actually happening in the state house. You post videos of state house like arguments on the House floor and on the Senate floor. And I think people are shocked when they see and hear that and cannot believe that that is the conversation. Like sometimes they'll even start off by saying, the scripture says that government should do X, Y, and Z. And I don't think that most of the state is so religious that they believe scripture should be determining government. Do you?
I don't think so. I think that I mean, I think the one thing the Republican Party has done really well in South Carolina, and I think even across the country, is convince, especially in South Carolina, is convince you that everyone is a Republican,
Right.
and that falling in line and kind of especially the whole identity politics of your family and your church. And so you just don't even question it. But like you were saying, I've talked to so many people and I asked them, like, you say you're conservative or Republican, like, where do you fall? Like, why are you against abortion? And they'll say, well, I'm not against abortion. It's not for me. But I said, I'm like, okay. And I'll ask them, if you're not for gay marriage, can you tell me why? They're like, oh, no. And so it's like they're saying they're Republican because that's how
Yeah.
they grew up and that's just what they assume everyone is. But then when you actually talk to them about the different subjects, they're like, oh no, like that doesn't align with me. And so I think sometimes just asking people, they're shocked themselves at how they've just fallen in line. And but how much of a part, I think in the South, especially because of religion, it is such a huge part of their identity. And bucking that seems almost like an insult to family or to their church.
That's right.
Yeah. And two, I will say the Republican Party in general has done a very good job of not that it is a good thing, but they've done a very good job of presenting their version of Christianity as good
Yeah.
and anyone opposed to that as evil, and set up a us versus them scenario.
Yeah.
And that is extraordinarily dangerous for a number of reasons, because when you elevate something past these are just disagreements to being a fundamental moral religious objection, it makes those feelings stronger even when they're not really there.
Yeah.
So people think I have to be against all of the Democrats because I will be an evil person otherwise. And that creates an extra power for the Republicans being able to have that type of connection. And like Carey was saying, most people, when they think about it, are pro-choice.
Yeah.
They just don't know that's what their version is. They assume, yes, I am fine if the mother is having difficulty. I am fine in instances of crimes being committed for those types of things. And I couldn't do it myself, but someone else doing it is fine. Those types of nuanced situations. The religious aspect gets rid of all of that nuance and just makes it good versus evil no matter what, which is part of the reason I am opposed to religion being in any type of government situation.
Right. Do you feel like your content moves the needle? Like, how many people do you reach on a weekly basis? And do you feel like you've seen any effects of your content? What's the craziest thing someone has said to you in response?
I think just getting recognized at all is crazy. Just this weekend, I went walking at the Riverwalk with a friend, and the girl was like, "Oh my gosh, I follow you on TikTok." And I was like, "Oh, hi." So, I mean, unfortunately, the thing with especially creating content around reproductive rights, around abortion, is that you get the most attention when there's like something catastrophic happening. And I feel like the same thing is true in a lot of different fields. And so it's this line of not exploiting a situation, but also making sure people are informed. And that if you can use that instance to create change, when it's knowing how and when to do that. Over the summer, when we were trying to battle against Senate Bill 323, which would have been the abortion bill that they were doing all of this out of session, by the way, but that would have criminalized abortion and opened up people to being charged with homicide and potentially receiving the death penalty. So many people I think so many people were shocked. Like, they just didn't think it would happen. They're just like, oh, this isn't like a thing that would actually happen. And so I think that's one reason people don't get involved. And they're like, oh, no, that's crazy. That will never happen, until they see these bills start to move. And then sometimes it gets to a point where it's too late. Like, it's moved too far. And so I think that with 323, especially, being there and filming and keeping people updated on what was happening, running into people at a rally or something and having them say, "I'm here because I saw your video. I had no idea this was going on. And I showed up today to protest or to talk to my senator because I saw this." So that for me is always, if it moves somebody to engage and to just be aware of what's happening in front of them, if it's one person, if it's 10 people, whatever, that's the best outcome.
Do you feel like you're talking into the bubble? That's something that I often worry about. Is we know that each other are there. We know that the people around the state there are, and so yes, we set up these different home bases for people to follow and take action from. But the only way that South Carolina ever changes is by growing the base of people who vote progressively, right? And so so Jessicka, I'm going to start with you. How do you address that? Like, how do you ensure that you're growing the space?
And one of my most viral videos is more recently, and it was so done right before I was leaving to go to lunch with my colleagues. It was a lady that was like, "I was so shocked to see that you are in South Carolina." And I whispered into the phone because there was people standing around outside my office. I was like, "There's so many of us here." That is one of my most viral videos is, oh my gosh, South Carolina. And people are naming, and then they're finding their city and they're finding their county within that. And I have it pinned to the top where people can still find it and they can still go. And it gets hit on day after day after day. Now with TikTok, political content is being suppressed a lot. And so it is hard, but it is when I find if I go and stitch or do something else with another content creator, those get hit harder. So with Carey being more at the state house than me, I've been stitching a lot of Carey's content. I put the location on mine. So I'll put Pickens County, I'll put Anderson County, I'll put Greenville County, depending on what county I'm in at the time. And that gets the audience in that county looking, because now we have an option on TikTok that's like our more local option. And so I find that to be helpful too, is that, that there's someone in Pickens that believes the same way that you do, or there's someone in Anderson or Pelzer or Williamson, Piedmont. I'm a Piedmont girl, born and raised. And people don't see that thought process. And they're like, oh my gosh, okay, so there are other people. I get contacted by Baptist preachers who are like, I can't say these things in front of my congregation, but my wife had to have an abortion. And I'm not okay with these men telling my wife what she can do. And that will come out the next time that I vote. And being from a small town, People tell me things that they wouldn't typically tell other people,
Yeah.
or like large groups of people. Even some of the people from Anderson County, when I was running, they were like, we're voting for you because your opposition is not really sane. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So that's your thought process. And you I may agree or may not agree, but it gets those people involved and engaged to know that there's somebody in their area. But it is hard right now because TikTok is suppressing all of that content, and it really has to pick up on its own and have a mind of its own. Because there's some, I've got 2 that I just posted, and there's 3 views on them.
One thing I really am fascinated by right now too is the political influencer economy. So have any of the 3 of you ever been approached by, and I'm bringing this up because I read this amazing piece by Emily, who does Emily in Your Phone. And she went into the details and sort of the backstory of the arc of right-wing influencer economy and how it was sort of developed out of talk radio, basically. And when you start putting stuff into, like when they started with talk radio, Rush Limbaugh, that was a space that reached not really the big cities. It was more rural, small town, because they don't have a whole bunch of other stations like big cities do. And so people really started listening to Rush Limbaugh, and that really developed this massive audience, which then has turned into what we now call influencer and the influencer economy. And I want to say 9 out of the top 10 influencer accounts on social media are right-wing leaning accounts. Where I think this is coming from is pop culture, is that we know that you can't stop pop culture. And so the right has decided that their way, they decided this a long time ago, but that their way to influence pop culture is through these different channels that traditionally Democrats just don't get on. Democrats are still TV, cable news panels, op-eds in newspapers. And those are the places where donors are looking and reading and listening. But those are not places that the general population is anymore. So how do you feel about what you're doing in the C? Do you feel like the left is starting to be able to compete with the right?
I will say that with campaigns in our state, Annie Andrews running for Senate, she has done a really good job of being out on socials and reaching those audiences that are there, not just on regular TV campaign ads. And Courtney McLean, that's running for Willie Timmons' seat in District 4 in the upstate, she is reaching out and putting things on social so she can get her name out there.
Yeah.
There are people in the political sphere that are starting to do that in our state, which is a fantastic thing to get them more coverage, more visibility, and get names out there.
Right.
But as far as like paid programming for podcasts or promotions and things like that, I personally ignore any emails that come in for, hey, we want to, put your video on here and maybe get you some money later. I don't know what all of those are, but I feel like scam and ignore them 90% of the time.
Right. Part of this is so part of the reason that creator driven political content is so effective is because most of the creators that, like a Joe Rogan or some of the bigger creators, they didn't start out as political creators, right? They started out becoming friends with their audience. They started out doing like, it's like a trusted source. So you're back and forth about other things. So maybe it's lifestyle, maybe it's workouts, maybe it's makeup, and then they sort of started to veer off into the political space because on the right, they saw years ago that those groups had trusted audiences. And so then, and those people weren't typically political. And the right was like, oh, this is smart. We should go into them, pay them to make content that is whatever their messaging was. And it's year round. And I feel like a lot of what the progressive model is this churn and burn cycle. They're not partnered with the lifestyle folks. They're not doing the long-term everyday work all year long. They're doing like what you just said, Lori, this 6-week cycle, 8-week cycle, 10-week cycle of media around their campaign, but it's not all the time. But people like Spencer are starting to do it. The Black Caucus is starting to do it, where they're putting out like a weekly video or a bi-weekly video saying, here's what happened this week. Here's what we're doing. And so do you see that, like, Carey, do you feel like you guys have been on sort of the front side of that, of developing your audience more as like individual relationship with your audience members versus just like, here's a bunch of political stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope so. And I think, like Lori mentioned with Courtney McLean and with Annie Andrews, I think seeing how successful they are, I think that I think that other Democrats are starting to see that. I mean, I know just personally I've been doing somewhat political content since 2021-ish. And I know I've had to like chase after people to try to talk to them and be like, hey, I would love to talk to you about this bill or get your input on this, and having to like chase after senators or representatives or even candidates to talk to them. I don't think that in the past they've seen the value of social media and content creation. And even I've worked on some campaigns and stuff, and even seeing kind of it's a little bit of an afterthought of, and social media. And I think finally it is starting to become clear. And I think a lot of people saw that with Mamdani and stuff, that this having that social media presence and and not just like creating little stitched together videos and stuff, but actually being present on the platform and talking to people is huge. And you really can't in 2026 not be on social media, not be on TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is. It's really to your own detriment not to be active in talking to the people at this point.
And Annie never stopped posting. And she has a very specific message, having been as a pediatrician, that her goal is about children and safety and all those things. And she's funny. She has like a really good presence on social media. I do think though, there was an article in the New Yorker a few weeks ago, and the article brought up a distinction between mobilizing and organizing. And mobilizing is getting people to do a thing, whereas organizing is getting people to get outside of their bubble. Organizing is actually drawing new people in and starting more of this lifestyle that's incorporated into your beliefs in politics. It's a bigger thing than just mobilizing. And I think that all three of you have been working on doing that on your platforms, right? It's not like you just really pop up around election time and say, hey, we need to go to this protest or we need to do this thing. It's much more of this is an everyday part of my life.
I think that as somebody who's organized and somebody who has mobilized, and I've had this conversation the other day, it came up when we were talking about what has recently happened at like the Pickens County Library system. Suddenly everyone was invested in what's going on. And I'm like, there are people who have been doing this hard work since 2022, and I know them very well. And let's make sure that how we're mobilizing is helpful to those who have been in there doing that work. I would not come in and work over top of another organization that already had their boots on the ground and that had the relationships with our state lawmakers. Those are the ones that are more influential, and they have the political power to be in the state House to lobby in the State House. So we back those. And there is a significant difference. I am very glad that there are protest organizations out there that are getting people outside of their bubble to say, hey, let's go outside and do something. But you know, when you're mobilizing and you're getting people to go to the State House to speak, when you're getting people to write letters to their legislators or to run for office, those are completely different beings. And I think that it's important to know that the difference between the two and where we need to put those people. And if there are people already doing this kind of work, because there are counties in South Carolina where there are not people who have been organizing or who have been mobilizing. We're starting to see those little trickles come in. And it's now, what do? I get calls on a daily basis. Like, how did you do this with Anderson Reeds? How did you do that with all the organizations that you have created in the state? Because I have two. And I'm like, it takes being able to know the difference between the two and getting the right people in the right spots. And that's still very difficult because either people want to do it and are excited to do it and see change in South Carolina, or they're ambivalent. They're like, okay, I want there to be change, but I don't know how to do it. And that's when we need to listen to the people that have been doing it for years and years.
And the mobilizing is more reactionary, right? Because like it's usually around something that you're able to take out to the general public and say, look how much this should piss you off.
Yes.
And then people get pissed about it. And in the moment, they're like, I'll do whatever I need to do. But the organizing is much more long-term. It's every day. It's consistency. It's not reactionary. It's informative.
One thing that I want to say on this, for my perspective, when I speak to people or run into people at protests and start conversations, is to tell them to get involved with one of the organizations, because they have things that need to be done. And many people are in the space of, I am being overwhelmed and inundated with catastrophes every single day. And you get into this mode of, let me just curl into a ball and go to sleep.
Yeah.
But if they're able to turn that anxiousness and dread of things that are happening in the news into something active, that is a key point to getting more people involved.
Yeah.
And finding the organizations that help you do that is massively important to help get the bigger goals on mobilizing or organizing in those differences. But for the average person, if they're able to pick the one thing that they're able to focus on, and even if it's just opening up 5 calls and calling a rep on anything.
Yeah.
If you're able to use that anxiety as an action, even if it's a small action, it's helpful.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we need to get better at, accepting people into groups, and more people want to help and don't know what to do or how to help, and keep them from that spiraling worry and dread. Because the administration, we knew this from the last term, like we were expecting that it was going to be a constant onslaught of, there is a bull in the china shop and everything is going to be broken. We knew that was coming, but living it is an entirely different experience, because
you said that right.
it's much more startling than you anticipate. And if you're able to figure out which organization matches what you want to do to help, and get them to take that extra step to say, let me sign up to hand out water bottles at a protest, or let me sign up to go to county council meetings.
Right.
Because most people see the national things and they don't know about the Pickens Library Board. They don't know about the organization that's been boots on the ground, because some of the organizations don't promote things for people to see them and get involved. They want to, not them specifically, but just in general. It's, we need to take care of this and we need to protect everything.
One thing I'll say is that because the right has been so good, I mean, as we know, Trump was an early adopter to Twitter, and they have been so good at collecting who their audience is and then finding different outlets either on TikTok or on Instagram, on podcasts to really partner with. And so they've built out a direct to consumer that is way more of a machine than what the Democrats and the left has been able to build out. And so in just to pull the thread a little bit more on what you're talking about, those are all great things, but the people that may want to hear that from us still aren't able to find us. And so I think that there still isn't this pipeline that the right has. And some of that, I think, is because the Democrats have been focused, and it's like everyone says, is they're focused on the college educated upper class voter versus the people who are feeling the direct effects of what our state legislators are doing in this very moment. And because those aren't traditional voters for the Democrats, we don't reach out to them. And so I feel like it's up to us to do that, right? That to me is what the core of our job is not even on progressive stuff. Just here's what your legislator just said and just leave it at that. You decide if that's what you believe.
And that's one of the videos I just posted that had 3 views when I got on here was like, who are your South Carolina General Assembly? Who's your rep and who's your senator? And tell me something that they've done for your area.
Yeah.
Something specific that has helped you. And I was like, we're just going to see how this goes because I know how it's going to go. Our legislator or state legislator this year has been involved in everything but trying to make day-to-day life better for South Carolinians.
Yeah.
And I know that the answer is going to be, but I want people to see that even if you're on the other side. I am reading Sherry Biggs, who she's on the federal level, but I'm reading her comments. I'm reading Josiah Magnuson's comments. I'm reading all these comments of these very conservative Republicans, and their people are going ham on them on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like, why are you not listening to us? This is not helping grocery prices. This is not helping gas prices. You're not sending my kids to war is a lot of one. I have not seen very many state legislators even have a response to Lindsey Graham's, we're going to send your kids to war. As the surviving spouse of a combat veteran, you're not sending my kids anywhere ever. And I'm not seeing the backing. Like you're starting to see the breakdown of the Freedom Caucus in the state house, and you're starting to see the breakdown of the MAGA folks within the state house. They're not agreeing anymore, and you're starting to see their voters dissipate and be disagreeable on purpose on their own legislators' social media. And I think that it's important that we keep seeing that, and even our state legislators getting their own social media where they can promote themselves. And it was Justin Bamberg who posted about April Cromer that made me go back and find the video where she was outing a trans individual at a community college. And it was because of Bamberg doing that I even saw that clip. And I think that that's what's important, is to let people know we're not even in a 24-hour news cycle. We're in a minute-to-minute news cycle.
Yeah.
And the more that we post, and I do this between clients, 5 minutes at a time I have, and sometimes they're not the best videos and they're not the most well-informed videos, but I'm trying my best because I think it's important. Nobody's paying me, but I want to see a better South Carolina. And I think that's all of we want to see the people in South Carolina flourish. And I just want to take note that this is women in this panel. And the women are what is going to save the state.
51% of us here, Jessicka, 51%.
It's the women that
only
are
13% in our legislature.
Right. It's the women putting our necks out on the line and saying, hey, this stuff isn't right. And we're not seeing men stand up quite as much as we are as the women. You just don't see that same turnabout that you're seeing with the women in South Carolina.
Don't you feel like that is why this zero income tax legislation is going through? Because they know that the women are pissed, because all the legislation they've done has been around women and women's children. Like when they write legislation against a trans kid or a gay kid or the LGBTQ community or books or against teachers or any of that, that affects the moms, right? Because those women know that their teachers are awesome. They know that their LGBT kid needs a parent. They know all the things. And so I think there's some I definitely think there's a little bit of movement on the women, particularly white women around this movement, who have maybe gone back and forth between Trump and not. And I think that it's definitely affecting. One thing that I will say is I do think that what we're seeing with the White House TikTok and the White House Instagram, and hearing, oh my God, why is he posting video games around war? Because they're not talking to us. You know what I mean? They are talking to the bros, that 18 to 35-year-old group of guys who is wellness culture, who need to feel powerful. And there's a great quote that I read that says, nothing is more dangerous than a young man without a future. And so that's purpose, right? And so by showing them these things that they're doing already, the video game culture and all that, they're giving them purpose. They're platforming you're on the right path. And I think that the right has been really good from that top down all the way down to the micro level of influencers, is to identify the space where they are, go in, fund the people that are the creators and the influencers on those spaces before anyone else notices, and then make it financially so that those creators are getting paid and they continue to be allegiant to that side. And Ken Martin, the National Party chair, has said multiple times, he was on this podcast saying this, you need to skate where the puck is, right? Which he's saying that, but the right is actually doing it. And we as progressives are not doing that well enough to create a culture around our fundamental beliefs. And so to me, that's what this call is about, right? That's what the three of you are doing. That's what I'm trying to do and platform more people who are bringing the culture of progressive politics to South Carolina.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I mean, I would say I think it's around 90% of my following is women between the ages of normally like late 20s, early 40s. And I think all of us would probably say that as well. So I would love to see, especially more young men in our doing progressive content, or just even like engaging and watching the videos. The men I do get engages if they're already here. You know what I mean? Like they're already, I'm not catching anyone new.
That's
and
right.
A lot of that is because a lot of what I talk about is shaped around my personal identity as a mom and as a wife and a former teacher and all of these things. And so, I mean, I would love to see more of that, and to see our party overall invest, whether it is financially or even just the time, into attracting more people from that young men group.
Yeah. Yeah. As we start to wrap up, is there anything that has surprised you about what you're doing? Lori, why don't we start with you?
I've been very surprised that on my TikTok channel in particular, I don't have reactions from the other side that are harsh. Generally, my comment section is reasonable and support. And if I do get a, I guess, MAGA comment of something, I interact with them and not exactly argue them until they stop talking, but have a logical conversation with them, so anyone else coming to read it shows how this type of logic is flawed, and don't be convinced by them. Because I don't try to convince people that are strongly stuck in their beliefs, because to me, those people are a waste of time. I am working on the people that are trying to make up their minds to determine, am I on the side of this hateful, visceral reaction, or do I want to be, a little bit reasonable? And those are the people that I try to reach, are the ones that are undecided, that are looking at things. And I don't know if that has an effect on some people if they're reading comments, but generally my comment section will also jump in and start attacking that person, that's fine with me for them to say your
That's
logic
the
is
internet.
flawed.
That's the
Yes,
internet,
that's how
right?
the
That's
internet
how the
goes. But
internet
that's one
works.
of the things that I've been most surprised about, that after I present information in a logical way, they don't respond,
Mhm.
because they don't have anywhere to go to just say whatever false things that they're saying.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I don't, and because I do that, I don't get a lot of comments
yeah.
that are negative.
I think it's true too that, you know, as people can see what is crazy about what's happening at the legislature right now, that also doesn't mean they're suddenly going to become Democrats. You know what I mean? I mean, people can moderate from what we're seeing in our state house and state senate and our school boards, and they can say that's not what I want, but that's not conservatism, or that's not common
Yes.
sense, or that's not this. And so when I say it's important for us to put information out there, it's not that it's not that I think everyone in the state should be progressive. I think there just needs to be an alternate narrative to what is coming out of all of the places around us.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
One of my favorite politicians is now a former politician, but Katrina Shealy.
Yeah.
She
She's
is
fabulous.
conservative. She's amazing. There have been points and times where I've been given speeches and stuff like that, and I just want to bawl. And all I can remember is senators don't cry. Senators don't cry. She has said that before. And we have such a really good working relationship together. And who would have ever thought, if people who know me and who've grown up with me and been around me, they're like, oh my gosh, you love a conservative? I'm like, yo, I love that woman with my whole heart, because she really is the epitome of, we're here to help. And this is not helping, we're hurting. So I think that's amazing.
And I will say, for me personally, I was always independent. I previously had liked some things that Republicans stood for, some things that Democrats stood for.
Yep.
And I did not say officially I am a Democrat until both Lindsey Graham told me that I'm a harm to society to my face, and then Nancy Mace said that I hate the state and the country. And then the next day I went to a Democratic Party meeting, because I'm like, well, that is not at all what I want to be associated with.
Yeah.
And I've never faulted someone for wanting to be conservative or trying to determine those things. But right now, the Conservative Party is not the old Conservative Party. The Republicans are shifting much, much, much further right. And the majority of people do not know that switch is happening.
Yeah.
They think they are still fiscal conservative, family values, and that's the extent of it. They don't understand how far drastically the Republican Party has shifted.
There is a lot of data, and I am part of this data, in that people are no longer identifying in the party structure, because the parties have created a purity test in order to be part of the party. And that is not I don't want to do that. But so people are identifying as independent, but what that doesn't do, like I said earlier, is change their fundamental beliefs. It just changes who you decide are your teammates, right? And I think that's the independence should be how everyone votes. We should have a good enough system of politics that people are competing on real issues instead of in a gerrymandered district. So, okay, Carey, I didn't mean to step in before you. What you got?
I would say I think the most surprising thing out of doing all of this is just being able to create change in any kind of way. I don't think any of us started this and thought this is going to go anywhere, or I think maybe we hoped, or that would create any kind of change. But I think just being able to impact the people in our communities and to be somebody who people go to or recommend to, hey, go follow her and see what she's saying about this thing. I think that's been the most surprising thing of all to me, is just that people even want to hear my voice.
Yeah. I feel, I will say we are the radical left is who is who, or I should say that different. We're the cat ladies. Are we the single cat? I don't know. Whatever. I have a cat. I have a cat.
I love too just being able to humanize also what the scary left looks like. And we're all three very different. There are creators from all across South Carolina who are doing political content, especially more about the progressive side of things. And we're all very different ages, different ethnicities, different religious beliefs and stuff. And so I think just having the opportunity to just humanize, hey, I make all of my videos in Carline at school and while I'm waiting for my kids to get out of school. And it's, like I'm in Carline and I'm going to run home and try to keep my kids from fighting for the next 3 hours until my husband is done working. And then we're going to have a quick dinner, do karate class. And I think I'm not like, it's not that scary. I'm not here, I don't know, doing witchcraft with fetuses, which I've been accused of before. So I don't know.
Oh my God.
We're just having lasagna tonight, guys.
Right.
I feel like part of that narrative is to tell certain people you don't belong here. And I think that what your platforms do is ensure that everyone everywhere in this state knows that they belong here. We all have the same right to be in this state, to enjoy the beauty and the amazing things that the state has to offer. And we also have the right to criticize what the government is doing in our state. And so to be told, that the only way to do that is to make you look like you're whack. But you're clearly not whack, Carey.
or I've talked about this in videos too. People saying, if you don't like it here, just leave. And it's like, but I actually love it here. There are so many things I love about this state, and for me, staying to make it better, more inclusive, more affordable. I do something about the roads. I don't know, any of those things, like to make it better for all of us. Yeah. I think that's where we're all just. I could leave, but I don't want to. I love it here.
The thing that I say all the time is, this is like my favorite way to describe when people say, how do you feel about politics? And I say, government is how we organize as a society. It is who we decide we collect money from and how much. Politics is how we decide how to spend that money and on whom. And that is the difference of those two things. And if we can just stay hyper-focused on the government aspect of it and not the political aspect of it, and make sure that everybody has a house, a place to live, a way to get to work, enough money to take a vacation, a good school for their kid to go to. These are really fundamental, basic, simple things. And we've lost the plot.
It's not that radical, is it?
No.
I mean, when we think about letting people, and this used to be such a conservative value, letting people live the life that they want to live. I'll let you have your guns if you let, the gay kids be gay. And it's like, where have we lost the plot of people get to be people and live in that freedom that has been afforded to them? And I think we really have lost that plot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on that note, I really enjoyed talking to all of you today. It's so fun to follow you. And I love how I also love how inclusive the content creators are. Everyone's sharing information and communicating with each other and tagging each other and collaborating. And that's really important because you are the foundation of building this infrastructure that is direct to consumer, direct to the people that you need to talk to, and maybe reach the people that think they're isolated and alone. So for that, I applaud you. And that's all the stew for today. Talk to you next week.